right, get in loser, we're going healing. Your brain lies to you every single day, and that's just the way that it is. And it doesn't really do that because it actually wants to hurt you, but rather because it's just trying to keep you safe. Safe does not always mean happiness or fulfillment. You know, the tough truth is your brain is wired for survival, to keep you alive, not necessarily for happiness. When your brain whispers to you that you didn't get a text back because they're just mad at you, your plan didn't go through because you're failing in life, or you're like a failure. And you know what's the problem with that? Is that you believe that these whispers are to be true, as though they're facts, when they're not. Your brain actually makes up these stories and these rumors to keep you safe and to protect you from a world that thinks it's dangerous. Your brain is automatically wired for survival. It's wired to always be scanning for danger because your brain will protect you. Like, for example, if you're out in the forest and you're being attacked by a tiger, this is the very natural instinct to have fear and come up with a way to protect yourself, right? But the thing with that is that we're not being chased by a tiger 24/7. This is what you have to convince your brain with. So because your brain is already wired for that, it always tends to blow things way out of proportion. Your boss wants to talk to you at work, that means that you're going to get fired. Your plan didn't work out, then that means that you're a failure. So many people are not aware that if they do believe these thoughts, then it will actually create their reality. And this is so dangerous. Neuroplasticity exists. The more that you think of something and the more that you believe these things, the more that your brain will build neural pathways, I think that's what they called, around what you believe, regardless if it's bad or good. That's the thing. Your brain does not know the difference between what's good and what's bad. It only knows what's familiar. The more that you believe these thoughts, the more that you tell your brain in one way or another that like, hey, like this is important. I think about it all the time. Make it a pattern. I've been doing a lot more reading than ever recently. I just finished reading this book called Don't Believe Everything You Think. This one. And it's mentioned in the book that your brain is actually the biggest salesman ever. It knows exactly what to tell you, and it knows exactly how to convince you into thinking that this thing is like a threat or like dangerous or whatnot. Like, for example, any fear that you might encounter or like negative emotions. The more that you buy into it, the more you're easily convinced with your brain's lies, the more that you're going to create these realities for yourself. For instance, let's talk, anxiety. Anxiety is constantly creating these negative scenarios in your brain 24/7. If somebody does not reply back to your text, instantly, anxiety will tell you that, like, you know what, they're mad at you. They don't care about you. They're leaving. They don't want to be friends with you anymore. And you keep replaying all of the things that you said, and you keep overthinking the things that you did and you said, even though it wasn't really like that to begin with. It wasn't that deep. Maybe they were just busy. And the thing with those fears is that they never come true. Because if you look back and think about everything that you thought that you wouldn't get over and you wouldn't overcome because of your anxiety telling you so, and you actually overcome them, you don't really think to yourself like, okay, maybe this fear was just a lie. It's not actually factual. And if you're not aware and you're not conscious of all these lies that your brain is making because it's simply wired for survival, you will be stuck in a constant cycle, in a vicious cycle that wears you down, always has you alert, always has you in fight or flight mode, and it creates these disasters for you as realities that you didn't even subscribe to, you didn't even ask for. But because you're simply not aware of the thoughts that you are thinking, they will manifest themselves, because when you think of something for a long period of time, it will turn into feelings, emotions, and then emotions manifest in the body. This book is so freaking amazing. I recommend it to anybody that really wants to rewire their brain, shut down all of this like negative thinking that your brain keeps on coming up with. What's mentioned in that book is that your thoughts are different from thinking. Your thoughts are just, ideas that pop into your head that are not actually created by you, but like you just get them from an external force. This is where you get these thoughts from. They don't feel constricting. They don't feel like limited or finite or heavy. These are thoughts, okay? And on the other hand, thinking is something that you create from your own brain, from your own mind. And this is where it gets very heavy and it feels very limited and you feel very negative and it basically constricts you. And this book goes on to explain about how every time you're stressed, it's actually because you're thinking. And you don't necessarily need to do all that thinking in order to live a fully functioning life. You can exist without it. But because your brain creates that, because it thinks that this is safety. And if you stop the thinking and if you get into a state of non-thinking, then the stress will stop and all of the negative emotions will stop and you'll just allow them to just flow. Like I've been there, done that. I've wasted so much time constantly just spiraling and allowing my mind to create thoughts however it pleases. And I used to wake up every day having this like feeling of happiness that like my brain just would not shut up. And the more that I believed the bad thoughts, the more that I spiraled and the more that I had anxiety and the more that I, was not able to just function and I was just in freeze mode. I was paralyzing myself basically. And when it comes to actually believing these lies that your brain makes up, this is actually also related to childhood. Most of us, we don't really carry our own set of beliefs like that. If you were around people that had a certain set of beliefs inflicted that upon you, and you grow up unconsciously taking them as your own when you didn't really believe that thing to be true deep down, but you just took it as your own because everybody around me convinced me so, then it must be true and it must be correct. It makes you realize that most of the lies that you believe from your brain are basically from your childhood. They are basically leftovers from your childhood where you learned that that was survival. That's what you needed in order to live. They're not really yours. Like these thoughts are not actually yours. They're just somebody else's and they gave them to you and you took them as your own. You mistaken them to be true when they actually weren't true. It was just based on these people's perceptions of the world, whether it be their own fears, their own limitations, their own brain's lies that they believe. Maybe, for example, when you were growing up, you had to be perfect in order to be loved or feel enough. And so now that you're an adult, your brain tells you that, like, I'm not good enough. And you believe it because this is what your brain was rewired for from childhood. Your brain will believe whatever feels familiar. And so because this is a familiar feeling from childhood, then it thinks that this thinking is to be true when it's not. And so it takes this as a fact. And for example, if you felt unseen or unheard in your childhood, now that you're an adult, your brain will whisper to you, nobody notices me, or like nobody cares about me. And you will believe that lie again because your brain has taken it for a fact when it's actually not true. And because your brain, thinks that what's familiar is what's safe, it clings onto these facts. And this is why it constantly tries to convince you with them over and over again into such a vicious cycle that you can't seem to get out of. Your brain will much rather live with what hurts you because it's familiar, but not what's good because it doesn't know what's good. It doesn't know any better because the unknown is way too scary for it. And like if you try to introduce anything, it will convince you that like, hey, like no, this is unknown, this is unsafe, just don't try, don't go through with it. Whenever you do come to introduce like a new mindset or make a change in your life or change a habit or whatnot. So this is the mindset shift that you need on this. You're not your thoughts, okay? Don't believe everything you think. Don't trust everything you feel. You are not actually your thoughts, but rather you're just the one that's hearing them. The moment that you start to stop believing these thoughts and rather just simply observe, you step into that witness seat and not necessarily the one that's going through them. And this is also mentioned in a book called This Is How You Heal by Brianna Wiest, also one of my top favorites ever. You have to always interrogate a negative thought, okay? You cannot trust everything you feel and you cannot trust everything you think. If your brain tells you and lies to you, like, hey, you're not enough, okay? Like, nobody loves you. You're not worthy or you're not deserving of amazing, beautiful things and you don't really deserve to be happy. You need to suffer in order to be successful or whatnot, okay? Rather than believing those lies, reply to your brain and be like, you know what? I think I am. You know what? I think I am worthy. And I think I do deserve to be happy. I think I am worthy of love and I think I am worthy of success. And the more that a negative thought comes up, sit with it and start questioning where this thought came from, to begin with. For instance, ask yourself, who told me this? And why do I believe it to be true? Why do I believe it? And why do I want to still keep believing it? Even though my logic tells me otherwise. Most of the time, you will realize that your brain's lies are not just your brain making up lies because it simply wants to, but rather it's actually the voice of the people that hurt you. I've actually done an in-depth video about this. Imagine that your mind or your brain is like your FYP, your TikTok FYP or like your Instagram feed. Every post, every thought that comes up, okay, you just keep scrolling, and you read a post that says you're falling behind in life. Do you stop everything to read it, that post, and you believe it to be true, or you just scroll past? That pause, that choice that you make to dwell in it and to think that it's true and then create realities out of it, will you make that choice, or rather will you just scroll past it and think to yourself, this is not true. I simply do not claim it as mine because it's simply not true. As simple as that. You're just watching. You're sitting in the witness chair. Every time a negative thought comes up, or for example, every time your brain is trying to tell you a lie and convince you with it, first ask yourself, is this a fact, or it's actually just a feeling coming from me thinking for way too long? Like, ask yourself, is this thought maybe perhaps coming from my past, like from my childhood? Sometimes all the anxiety that you feel is actually coming from childhood. If you fear a certain thing, your subconscious will be wired from childhood, fearing this thing your entire life. And unless you rewire it to the opposite, unless you rewire your subconscious mind into believing the opposite, suddenly you're not scared of that thing anymore. Because when we are born, we only have two fears, the fear of falling and the fear of noise. All of the other fears are basically given to you by people. Another great book that I would actually really recommend about this topic is The Power of Your Subconscious Mind. Easily also one of my top favorites. And finally ask yourself, if I didn't believe this thought to be true, if I simply just deem it as a lie, how would I react? How would I behave? And act as though you don't believe it and act as though it's a lie and see what happens. I bet it will be like a transformational point, and you will realize that it was all just a lie. That tiny gap that you will create between the belief and the thought is your freedom. This basically ties into everything in your life. This is the root cause, and this is like the starting point to everything in your life in terms of success or like relationships with other people. When you change these thoughts, it will not just change your feelings, but it will also change your actions. It will stop you from self-sabotaging everything that you want to create in life because you're simply fearing things, or you're holding yourself back because of you thinking that you don't deserve success or you don't deserve happiness. You'll stop holding yourself back and you'll stop avoiding challenges, and you'll stop playing it small because your belief shapes your behavior, which shapes your reality and then becomes proof of your belief. So because your brain is not naturally wired for happiness but rather survival, you need to start rewiring your brain into thinking that you're not being chased by a tiger and you're not in danger, and that you can be happy and that you don't necessarily need to suffer your way through life in order to achieve everything that you've ever dreamt of and feel the joy and the happiness that you deserve, because joy and peace and happiness is your true natural state. And then once you stop thinking and you simply allow yourself to be in flow, then you will actually start living and you allow yourself to feel that joy. It's in your true natural state. You just have to be conscious and aware enough of the thoughts that you choose to keep and that you choose to believe, and everything else, simply just allow it to be untrue and just let it go.